I never thought I'd spend my 62nd birthday standing in a rundown garage, holding a rusty key and wondering if my own daughter had completely lost her mind. But there I was, staring at a padlocked door while Victoria's words echoed in my head, "Dad, you're being irrational about a worthless piece of junk. Just sell it and move on." Let me back up. I'm Harold Pierce, and 6 months ago I buried my wife Dorothy after 35 years of marriage. Dorothy was the glue that held our family together. Without her, well, let's just say things got complicated fast. Especially with my daughter Victoria. The whole mess started 3 weeks earlier when my old business partner Charlie passed away. Charlie Morrison and I had run an automotive engineering firm together for 20 years before we both retired. Good man, never married, no kids. His lawyer called me into the office. "Mr. Pierce," the attorney said, adjusting his glasses, "Charles has left you the property at 1420, Industrial Parkway. It's a garage facility he's owned for about 15 years. I was surprised. Charlie had never mentioned owning any garage. "What kind of garage?" I asked. "According to the deed, it's a commercial automotive storage facility. Here's the key and paperwork." Victoria was sitting next to me in her perfectly pressed suit, and I could practically feel her calculating the property value in her head. She'd been doing that a lot lately. Measuring everything in dollars and cents since Dorothy passed. "What's the square footage?" she asked immediately. "What's the neighborhood like for development potential?" The lawyer shuffled through his papers. "It's approximately 3,000 square feet on a quarter-acre lot. The area is zoned mixed commercial and residential." Victoria's eyes lit up. This was exactly what she'd been pushing me to consider. Liquidating assets to maximize my financial position, as she put it. She'd been after me to sell the house, move into a senior community, and basically let her manage everything. That evening, Victoria came over to my apartment with takeout Chinese food and her laptop. "Dad, I've been doing research on that garage property," she said, opening spreadsheets on her computer. "The lot alone is worth at least $200,000, maybe more if we can get it rezoned for high-density housing." "Hold on," I said. "I haven't even seen the place yet." She looked at me like I was being difficult. "What's to see?" "It's an old garage. The value is in the land, not some deteriorating building." Victoria had always been ambitious. But since making partner at her law firm, she'd become something else entirely. Everything was about leverage, opportunity costs, and strategic positioning. She'd even suggested I was underutilizing my assets. "I think I'll take a look at it first," I said. Her expression tightened. "Dad, you're being sentimental again. This is exactly why we need to have a serious conversation. We need to discuss your financial planning." The next morning, I drove out to Industrial Parkway. The garage sat on a corner lot, looking pretty rough from the outside. Faded paint, cracked windows, weeds growing through the parking area. I could see why Victoria would write it off as worthless. But something felt off about the whole situation. The building might look run down, but the security was serious. Heavy-duty locks, reinforced doors, and what looked like a pretty sophisticated alarm system for a supposedly abandoned garage. I tried the key Charlie's lawyer had given me. The door opened with a loud creak, and I stepped into complete darkness. My hand found a light switch quickly. When the fluorescent fixtures flickered on, I just stood there staring. 3 cars sat under custom-fitted covers, arranged like they were on display in some private museum. But it was what I could see at the edges that got my attention. Chrome bumpers, distinctive wheel wells, the unmistakable profile of classic American muscle cars from the golden era. My hands shook a little as I pulled the first cover. Underneath was a 1967 Shelby GT 500, candy apple red with white racing stripes. The thing looked absolutely mint condition. The second cover revealed a 1969 Dodge Charger R/T in B5 blue that looked like it had just rolled off the showroom floor. The paint was perfect, chrome spotless. "Charlie, you son of a gun," I whispered to myself in the empty garage. The third car was a 1970 Plymouth Cuda in plum crazy purple. I'd seen cars like these at shows. I knew what they were worth in today's market. We were talking serious money here, each car probably worth $80,000 to $120,000 or more, depending on authenticity and condition. But that wasn't all I found in Charlie's secret garage. On a workbench against the far wall, I found a manila envelope with my name written on it. Inside were maintenance records, authentication certificates, and a letter in Charlie's familiar handwriting. The paper was his personal stationery from home. "Hal," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone. You've discovered my little secret. I've been collecting these beauties for 15 years, ever since we sold the business. Always meant to tell you about it somehow. But I never found the right time. Here's the thing, I know Victoria's been pressuring you to liquidate everything since Dorothy passed. I've watched her operate up close. I'm worried she sees you as a problem to be managed rather than a father to be respected. These cars are my gift to you right now. But more than that, they're your insurance policy against financial manipulation. Don't tell Victoria about them right away. See how she handles things first. There's more paperwork in the safe. The combination is Dorothy's birthday. Whatever you decide to do with these cars, make sure it's your decision, not hers. Your old friend, Charlie. Dorothy's birthday, 0428. I found the hidden safe and opened it. Inside were more documents, business contracts, property deeds, investment records. Charlie had been busier than I thought. There were consulting agreements with 3 major automotive manufacturers, all transferring to me upon his death. The annual value was close to $200,000 in ongoing work. I sat down hard on a nearby stool. Charlie had left me not just 3 classic cars, but a continuing income stream worth more than I'd made. I spent the next hour going through everything, making sure I understood what I was looking at. By the time I locked up and drove home, I had clarity. Victoria called that evening. "Dad, I've been thinking about that garage property. I could handle the sale for you, I know some developers who might be interested." "I'm still considering my options," I told her. "What options?" "It's a rundown building on a decent lot. The longer you wait, the more carrying costs you'll accumulate. Insurance, property taxes, maintenance. Victoria, I appreciate your concern, but I can handle my own affairs." There was a pause. "Dad, I'm worried about you. Ever since Mom died, you've been making questionable decisions. Maybe we should schedule you for a cognitive assessment." That stopped me cold. "A what?" "Just a baseline evaluation. It's standard practice for people your age, especially when managing significant assets." People my age. Like I was some confused old man who couldn't be trusted with his own checkbook. "I'll think about it," I said, but I was thinking about Charlie's warning. Over the next few days, I did some investigating. I called Tim Kellerman, a classic car specialist I'd met at a few shows over the years. When I described the cars without mentioning ownership, his reaction was immediate. "You're talking about serious collector pieces, Hal. A clean 67 Shelby GT 500 in today's market? You're looking at $120,000 minimum, maybe $140,000 if it's got the right documentation. The Charger R/T and Cuda aren't far behind." So Charlie had left me close to $350,000 in cars. Plus the consulting contracts, plus whatever other assets were in that paperwork pile. That weekend, Victoria showed up at my apartment unannounced. "Dad, we need to talk," she said. She pushed past me into the living room. "I've been doing some research on your financial situation." "My financial situation is fine." She opened her briefcase and pulled out papers. "Your monthly expenses have increased 40% since Mom died. You're paying rent on this apartment plus maintaining the house. Your portfolio took a hit last year. You're withdrawing principal to cover living costs." She wasn't wrong. Since Dorothy's death, I'd been struggling to adjust to managing everything alone. But I hadn't realized Victoria was monitoring my accounts. I've prepared some paperwork, she continued, to streamline your asset management. It would give me power of attorney for financial decisions, which would allow me to optimize holdings. You want me to sign over control of my money? I want to protect you from making costly mistakes. Dad, you bought a $3,000 vintage radio last month. You're spending money on emotional purchases instead of practical needs. The radio had been a gift for Dorothy that I'd found too late. But I didn't explain that. I need to think about this, I said. Her expression hardened. Dad, I'm trying to help you, but you're being stubborn. If you can't make rational decisions about that garage, how can I trust you with serious financial planning? That's when I realized Victoria had already made up her mind about me. In her view, I was a problem. The garage isn't worthless, I said quietly. Dad, it's a rundown building in an industrial area. I know you're attached to it because it came from Charlie. But sentiment doesn't pay bills. Have you actually seen it? She looked impatient. I don't need to see it. I've reviewed the property records, tax assessments, neighborhood comps. It's worth the land value, nothing more. That's when I made my decision. Victoria, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not signing any power of attorney papers. And I'm not selling the garage. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Dad, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're making emotional decisions instead of logical ones. Maybe. But they're my decisions to make. After she left, I called Patricia Brennan, an estate planning attorney I'd met through Dorothy's lawyer. I explained the situation carefully. Harold, she said, if your daughter is pressuring you to sign over financial control, you need to be very careful. Power of attorney is a serious legal instrument. Once signed, it's difficult to revoke if the person holding it claims you're not competent to make that decision. What do you mean? If Victoria believes you're making irrational decisions, she could use the power of attorney to override your wishes, claiming she's protecting your interests. And if you try to revoke it, she could argue your desire proves incompetence. That's a hell of a trap. It happens more often than you'd think, especially with elderly parents and ambitious adult children. I spent that night thinking about Charlie's letter. The next morning, I drove back to the garage and went through all the paperwork more carefully. Charlie had been thorough. The consulting contracts were legitimate and valuable. The car documentation was complete and professional. But there was something else, a pattern in the dates and transactions that told a story about timing. Charlie had started acquiring these assets right around the time Victoria made partner at her law firm. His notes mentioned protecting accumulated wealth from family interference and ensuring Hal independence. Charlie had seen this coming years ago. I spent the next week quietly gathering information. I called the 3 companies holding consulting contracts and confirmed they were real. I had Tim Kellerman come look at the cars and provide written appraisals. I documented everything carefully. Then I called Victoria and asked her to meet me. We met at a restaurant near her office. Dad, she said as soon as she sat down, I hope you've reconsidered the power of attorney. I've been talking to colleagues. They all agree that proactive management is essential for people in your situation. Actually, I wanted to discuss something else. I've been going through Charlie's garage more carefully. She waved dismissively. Dad, please don't tell me you're getting sentimental about old tools and car parts. I slid a folder across the table. Take a look at this. Inside were copies of the car appraisals and consulting contracts. Victoria opened the folder and her expression shifted from impatience to confusion to something much harder. What is this? Charlie's real legacy. 3 classic cars worth about $350,000, plus consulting contracts worth $200,000 annually. Victoria stared at the papers, her lawyer brain processing the implications quickly. This changes everything. Why didn't you tell me about this immediately? Because I wanted to see how you'd handle things first. She looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means Charlie warned me you might be more interested in controlling my assets than protecting my interests. Victoria's face flushed red. Dad, that's not fair. Everything I've suggested has been for your financial benefit. Has it? Or has it been about making your life easier? She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, more careful, more calculating. Dad, we need to discuss how to properly manage these new assets. The tax implications alone are significant. And storing valuable cars in an unsecured garage is a liability nightmare. And there it was. Even faced with evidence that I wasn't the confused old man, Victoria's instinct was control. The garage has excellent security, I said. And I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Dad, be realistic. You don't know anything about classic car markets or commercial consulting. You need professional help. You're right. So I've hired Patricia Brennan to handle the legal aspects and Tim Kellerman to advise on the cars. Victoria's expression tightened noticeably. You're making major decisions without consulting me. The same way you've been making plans for my life without consulting me. That evening, Victoria called me 3 times. The first call was angry, how could I not trust her with something this important? The second was guilt, didn't I know she only wanted to protect me? The third was different. Dad, she said, I think we need to have you evaluated by a geriatric psychiatrist. Your judgment seems compromised. My judgment is fine. Hiding major assets from your family isn't normal behavior. Neither is trusting strangers over your own daughter. I realized Victoria was building a case, documenting what she'd characterize as irrational behavior. Victoria, I'm going to say this once. I am not signing over power of attorney. I am not selling the garage or the cars. And if you continue treating me like incompetent, you're going to find yourself cut out of my will entirely. She was quiet for a long moment. Dad, I'm going to do what I have to do. The next week, I received papers from Victoria's law firm. She was petitioning for emergency guardianship, claiming I was suffering from cognitive decline and making dangerous financial decisions. Her evidence included my irrational attachment to Charlie's garage, my secretive behavior regarding the inherited assets, my emotional spending on the vintage radio, and my paranoid distrust of family members. Patricia Brennan looked over the paperwork and shook her head. This is aggressive, Harold. She's using her legal knowledge to fast-track a process that normally takes months. Can she win? If the judge only hears her side, maybe. But we have advantages she doesn't know about. Over the next few weeks, Patricia and I built our counter case. We documented the careful research I'd done on the car values and consulting contracts. We gathered testimonials from Tim Kellerman and others about my clear thinking and judgment. Most importantly, we had Charlie's letter explaining his reasons for keeping the inheritance secret. But our biggest advantage was Victoria herself. Patricia hired a private investigator to look into her background. What we found was interesting. Victoria's law firm was in financial trouble. She'd been taking risky cases on contingency, and several had gone bad. She owed significant money to partners. She needed capital fast. Her attempts to control my assets weren't about protecting me, they were about saving her career. The hearing was held on a Thursday morning. Victoria appeared with 2 colleagues, presenting their case with professional confidence. She painted me as a confused widower making increasingly poor decisions. Then Patricia presented our evidence. She showed the court Charlie's letter and his explicit instructions to keep the inheritance private initially. She presented the professional appraisals proving the garage's true value. She had Tim Kellerman testify about my knowledgeable discussions of car markets and restoration processes. Most damaging to Victoria was the financial investigation. Patricia presented evidence of Victoria's law firm troubles. Your Honor, Patricia said, this petition isn't about protecting an elderly parent. It's about a desperate attorney trying to seize control of newly discovered assets for her problems. The judge asked Victoria directly about her firm's financial situation. I watched my daughter realize that her careful legal strategy had been turned completely against her. The petition was denied. But more than that, the judge was clearly disturbed by Victoria's tactics. He ordered a review of her conduct with the State Bar Association. After the hearing, Victoria and I stood on the courthouse steps. She looked exhausted and defeated, like someone who just realized how far she'd fallen. "Dad," she said finally, "I never meant for it to go this far." "But you meant for it to go somewhere." She nodded slowly, unable to meet my eyes. "I was scared. About the firm, about my career, about taking care of you as you get older. Everything felt completely out of control. For the first time in months, genuine emotion. Victoria, I understand being scared. But trying to control my life isn't taking care of me. It's taking care of yourself at my expense." We didn't hug or reconcile that day. But something shifted between us standing there on those courthouse steps. A recognition that we'd both lost sight of what really mattered in all the legal maneuvering. Over the following weeks, the consequences of Victoria's actions played out exactly as the judge had indicated. The State Bar Association launched a formal investigation into her conduct. Her law firm, already struggling financially, couldn't weather the scandal of a partner attempting to defraud her own elderly father. The partnership dissolved within 2 months of the hearing. Victoria lost her position, her income, and most of her professional reputation. She had to move out of her expensive downtown apartment into a modest rental across town. But something interesting happened during those difficult months. Victoria started calling me regularly, not about money or legal matters, but just to talk about life and family memories. "Dad," she said during one of our conversations, "I keep thinking about what Mom would say about all this. She'd probably say we both learned something important the hard way." "What did you learn?" she asked. "That your old man isn't as helpless as you thought." She was quiet for a moment. "What did I learn?" "That's for you to figure out." 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, Victoria found a new position with a small practice specializing in elder law. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She was earning about half her previous salary, but she seemed more at peace with herself and her work than I'd seen her in years. "I spend my days now protecting elderly people from exactly what I tried to do to you," she told me over dinner one evening. "Every case reminds me how wrong I was about everything. People make mistakes, Victoria. The important thing is learning from them and making things right." We were eating at Charlie's. As for me, I sold one of the cars, the Charger, and used the proceeds to buy a small house near the coast. The location reminded me of places Dorothy loved. I kept the Shelby and the Cuda safely stored in Charlie's garage, which I'd had professionally upgraded with even better security systems and climate control for long-term preservation. Charlie's consulting contracts continued to provide excellent income, allowing me to live comfortably without touching my other retirement savings. The work kept my mind sharp and engaged. Victoria and I have dinner together once a month now. Our relationship is different, more careful, more respectful of boundaries, but also more honest than before. She asks for my advice sometimes instead of trying to give orders. I share more about my financial decisions instead of keeping everything private for protection. "Dad," she said during our most recent dinner, "I want you to know that I'm proud of how you handled everything. You outplayed me completely." "It wasn't about outplaying you, Victoria. It was about protecting myself and teaching you an important lesson about respect." "I get that now. I just wish it hadn't taken a courthouse battle. Sometimes people need to face consequences before they can change." "Your mother always said that growth requires discomfort." Victoria smiled sadly. "Mom was usually right about those things." "Usually." She was always right. These days, when the weather's nice, I take the Shelby out for drives along the coastal highway. The car runs like a dream, and the ocean views remind me why Dorothy loved this area. I think about Charlie during those drives, grateful for his foresight and friendship. He understood something about family dynamics that I've been too close to see clearly. The garage is still there, still secure, still holding what's left of Charlie's legacy. But the real lesson isn't about the money or the cars or even the legal victory. It's about knowing your own worth and not letting anyone, not even family, convince you otherwise through manipulation or false concern for your welfare. Charlie's letter sits framed on my desk at home now, a reminder of true friendship and the importance of planning ahead for difficult family situations. Whatever you decide to do with these cars, make sure it's your decision, not hers. Those words saved me from losing both my independence and my dignity. Victoria occasionally asks about the remaining cars, but not in the controlling way she used to. Now it's genuine curiosity about automotive history and appreciation for craftsmanship. The Cuda is beautiful, Dad. Charlie had excellent taste. He did. And he had good judgment about people too, even when it took time to prove itself. Last month, Victoria brought her new boyfriend to dinner. A public defender who works with elderly clients facing financial abuse. The irony made me smile, but I kept quiet. He seemed like a decent man who treats Victoria with respect and shares her newfound commitment to protecting vulnerable people. Dorothy would have approved of the change. Because at 62, I've learned something important. You're never too old to stand up for yourself, and you're never too old to teach someone you love a lesson they need to learn. Sometimes the best inheritance you can leave someone isn't money or property. Sometimes it's the wisdom to recognize their own worth and the courage to defend it. The garage key that once opened just a physical door ultimately unlocked something far more valuable, a new understanding of respect, boundaries, and the difference between love and control. Charlie knew what he was doing when he left me that garage. He gave me more than classic cars and consulting contracts. He gave me back my independence and self-respect. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, but the wisdom to recognize when someone you love has lost their way. Real family strength comes from setting boundaries with respect, not from controlling each other through manipulation disguised as concern and protection.